FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
As mentioned, we have with us in the studio a special guest right now. Eric Greitens is our guest. Of course, the Republican nominee for governor here in the state of Missouri. Eric, how are you?
Mark, I'm doing great. Great to be on with you again.
Welcome
Thanks
back.
for having me.
Absolutely. Glad you could join us today. Obviously, a lot has happened since the last time we had you in the studio. First of all, congratulations.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Mark. You know, we had an incredible team that came together to make that victory happen. One of the things that's also been so exciting is that, you know, since we won 2 weeks ago, people have come around the state, uniting behind us. Catherine Hanaway has been incredibly kind and gracious coming out and supporting us. And in fact, Republicans, conservatives all over the state getting behind this campaign. We've had independents, Democrats reaching out. They're excited about this campaign because the contrast is so clear.
What have they told you that they want you to focus on?
Well, what they're really excited about and what they want us to focus on is the very clear contrast in this race. You know, look, I'm a Navy SEAL. Founder and CEO of The Mission Continues, the organization that I started when I came home from Iraq to help veterans get quality jobs, helping them to continue to serve in their communities. I'm a husband and father, and I'm running against Chris Koster, who is a corrupt career politician. This guy is a big spending liberal, just like Hillary Clinton. He spent $3.2 million to redecorate his office. My office in Fallujah was a tent. When it was a really great office, we had a trailer. He spent $3.2 million to decorate his office. He gave over $1 million in raises. This is also a guy who the New York Times reported when he was attorney general and he was supposed to be fighting for the people of Missouri, when he had powerful corporations and their law firms give him money, he'd drop a lawsuit or he'd settle it. And then when he was caught doing this, and he said, well, I'll put in place a new ethics policy to change things, they found that he was lying about that. And when they did an audit a year later, they saw that nothing had changed. So look, people recognize Chris Koster is a corrupt career politician. He's been in office for over 2 decades. And the big choice in this election is that, you know, if you like the way things are in Missouri, then you can stick with a corrupt politician like Chris Koster. But if you want to go in a new direction, then we're excited about having you join this campaign.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because in a 4-person primary, you ran as the outsider. You carried that mantle as somebody who's bringing something new in, and you won in a 4-person primary with a split vote. In the Trump campaign, he's running as an outsider. We see a lot of support at his rallies. Is there a groundswell of support that maybe isn't as visible as we think for that outsider mantle? Do you think you're going to be able to take advantage of that?
There's a tremendous amount of support. I'm coming in not just as an outsider, but also, Mark, as a proven leader. You know, when people see not just what I did in the Navy SEAL teams with The Mission Continues, when they know that I started and ran my own small business, that I'm working now with over 8,000 veterans around the country, helping them to come home, start their own small businesses, get quality jobs. When they see that I've done humanitarian work overseas, working with kids in Bosnia who lost their parents during the ethnic cleansing, working with kids in Rwanda who lost their parents during the genocide, working in one of Mother Teresa's homes for the destitute and dying. What is exciting people about this campaign is that they want a leader who's willing to go to the front lines. They recognize that Chris Koster and the special interest insiders and the well-paid lobbyists, that their kind of big spending liberal priorities have taken the state in the wrong direction. And when they see something like Ferguson also, they realize that Chris Koster is just not a guy who can lead this state.
So what are your solutions when it comes to bringing new business in? I had somebody on from the Show Me Institute earlier. We were talking about how St. Louis and Kansas City can market themselves and try to bring in some corporations and some new jobs. Clearly, that's a challenging proposition in the state of Missouri. What do you do day one in office? What are you going to do?
So a couple of critical things that we need to do. And you're right, Mark. First, we got to look at where we're at right now. When you think about what Chris Koster has done in his years in office, Missouri is now 47th in economic growth. 42nd in job growth, 43rd in wage growth. We did town halls all over the state asking people this very question, listening to them, asking what can we do in this state to change things. And it was very clear that people in Missouri are hurting. Businesses are leaving. People who are lucky enough to have a job often aren't seeing a raise for 6 or 7 years. So when I'm governor, a couple of very clear things that we need to do. We need to cut regulations. We need to sign right to work. We need to improve Missouri's litigation environment. You know, Chris Koster has been responsible for a litigation environment here in Missouri where we're considered to be, they called us a judicial hellhole, the 4th worst in the country. We need to reform that. We also need to reform our welfare system. We're right now, out of all of the 50 states, in our abilities to move people off of welfare to work, they rank Missouri 50th. Now, look, I've worked with people, again, on the front lines, not only building my own small business, but also helping other veterans to start their own small businesses. And I've worked with veterans and their families who've come home, found themselves on food stamps, found themselves on welfare. And you know what we did? We helped them off. We helped them to get quality private sector jobs. We helped them to live lives of purpose and dignity and meaning. And that's what people are looking for, is a real leader, as opposed to the kind of corrupt career politician that they've got in Chris Koster.
So you talked about drawing support from some of your opponents in the primary. You also need to motivate their supporters to support you. What I asked earlier for my listeners was to call in if they had a couple of questions they wanted me to ask you.
Sure.
Who are people who may or may not have supported you during the primary. So let me go down this list. Somebody wanted me to ask you about your stance on being pro-life. Have you always been pro-life?
Yes. Look, I'm pro-life. I'm strongly pro-life. And for me, unlike the politicians who just talk about this, I've actually done the work, Mark. I mean, I've been out there. I've worked in one of Mother Teresa's homes for the destitute and dying. I have seen the tremendous power that comes when we make a decision that we're going to treat every life with compassion. And I believe that we need to defend the lives of the unborn, that we need to recognize that every life has value. And we need to step forward as compassionate leaders who are willing to go to the front lines and actually make a difference on this. And that's a kind of leader I've always been.
So another question someone wanted me to ask you is, and I know this came up during the primary because you and I talked about it when you were in the studio, out-of-state contributions to your campaign. For some reason, and maybe for legitimate reasons, that makes some people uncomfortable. They don't like the fact that outside money is influencing Missouri politics.
Yeah, look, what I'd say to everybody is, look, first of all, what people should take a lot of heart from is how much money we raise as an outsider in Missouri. Actually, in the primary, in many quarters, right, we actually raised more money in Missouri than all of our opponents combined. And of course, we also raise money from people around the country because as the founder and CEO of the Mission continues, again, the organization that helps veterans to come home and to live successful lives, we're now operating in all 50 states, Mark. So we've gotten to know people around the country, and a lot of them were donors to the campaign. But when you actually go out and you help somebody who's in a tough spot, you know, we worked with veterans who came home. Some of them got, addicted to prescription medications. Some of them started drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning. When you make a difference in the life of a veteran like that, and you help them to wake up every day with pride, to have service that they're doing in the community that they find meaningful, to have a job or a business that they're running, when they turn around and they saw me running for governor, they said, you know what, I'm going to have Eric Greitens back.
You got
and they did.
The chamber endorsement today, is that correct?
We did, and we're honored to have the support of small business owners all over this state, Republican, Democrats, and independents, who recognize that we need to have a leader who's going to help us to build a thriving economy here in Missouri with more private sector paychecks and bigger private sector paychecks. And they all recognize that, Chris Koster has just failed us on that front.
On the Donald Trump campaign, do you endorse him? Is he endorsed you? Are you?
You might have seen just on Tuesday, Mark. I was actually with Mike Pence,
Okay.
and it's very likely that Governor Pence is going to come here to Missouri. One of the things that Governor Pence, I was honored when he said this. He said it is so important for us to win the state of Missouri, and he was exceptionally kind. He was mentioning, I think, he said Fortune magazine at one point, it ranked me one of the 50 greatest leaders in the world, and Governor Pence said, this is a guy who we have the opportunity opportunity now to be one of our Republican governors in the country. And he said, I'm going to do everything I can to help him to become governor of Missouri, and I hope that all of you will too. And so I really appreciate Governor Pence's support.
So everyone expects a lot of money to be spent in this election. How are you seeing that support monetarily right now?
We're doing really well. Lots of folks are coming out and donating to the campaign. But I will tell you, Mark, while a lot of people they focus just on the money aspect of politics, the thing that helped us to put us in such a strong position where we're at today to win this general election, and the reason why we were successful in the primary, was we outworked our opponents and we made our case to the people. We did over the course of kind of the second half of June and July, over 150 town halls and events all over the state of Missouri. And when we brought our case to the people, they responded. And that's exactly why we're so confident about this race. Look, the choice in this election has become so clear with Chris Koster, the big spending liberal, the corrupt career politician, Eric Greitens, the husband and father, the small business owner who's done humanitarian work around this world, who served as a Navy SEAL. When we take that case to the people, we know that they're going to respond, because people want to take the state in a new direction, and they recognize that Chris Koster just represents the status quo. So, we're doing great on the fundraising, but we're also doing incredibly well building, again, this grassroots support from people all over the state. One group of folks who's really come out incredibly strongly for us, Mark, have been our law enforcement officers, because they have recognized especially Chris Koster's failures. I mean, keep in mind, Chris Koster is the Attorney General of Missouri. He's our chief law enforcement officer. And during Chris Koster's tenure, murders are up 30% in Missouri. Rapes are up 60% in Missouri. Now, those aren't just statistics. Those are real lives being lost, lives being destroyed because of Chris Koster's failures. The FBI has talked also about what's happening in Missouri with the Ferguson effect, where now the city of St. Louis, we're the per capita murder, aggravated assault, rape, and robbery capital of the country. Springfield and Kansas City have rates of violent crime triple the national average. And when I speak to law enforcement officers all over the state, they will tell you Chris Koster abandoned us when we needed him. He is a career politician who looks out for himself, and when things got tough, he abandoned our law enforcement officers. And that's one of the big groups that's come around to support us, because they recognize that Chris Koster's legacy of failure as an attorney general is now hurting all of us.
Well, a good sign is that the liberal media is already suspicious of you because of the ad where you're firing. Is that a 50 cal across the lake?
That's right. Look, that was a minigun, and we had a lot of fun with that. And you know what? What's great is we know that a lot of members of the liberal media are going to come out and attack us because they're afraid of this campaign. They're so afraid, in fact, Mark, that you might remember in the last few days of the Republican primary, the Democrat Governors Association, Chris Koster, and the Obama political machine spent over $1 million attacking me, because they were afraid of us winning, because they knew that the contrast between me and Chris Koster was so strong that we would beat them in the fall. And it's an insider game that Chris Koster was playing, trying to rig the election so he could choose his opponent. Well, you know what? The people of Missouri are a lot smarter than Chris Koster, and you know what? He's got a fight on his hands, and we're going to beat him in the fall.
Eric Greitens, Missouri Gubernatorial candidate. Hey, thanks for your time.
Honored to be with you on again, Mark. Thank you, sir.
Welcome back anytime you're in town. Please let us know. We appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll get to your phone calls, 314-969-9797.